So here we'll talk about some key aspects here to bill. According to the Constitution, any bill that deals with money has to originate in the House. That is just one of those privileges that were argued for in the Connecticut Compromise. They wanted to have the power of the purse. I'm not going to test you over that one, but that's one probably going back to U.S. history. So when they argued for that, they said the Senate's getting all kinds of privileges. We want to have power over money. So that was put in the Constitution, has to go in the House, cannot come from the Senate. Public bills are those that are going to apply to the nation as a whole. So a public bill applies to the nation as a whole. Compare that with a private bill that is only going to apply to a certain group of people or a small section of the nation. So public bills deal with the entire nation as a whole. Private bills, just certain people or places. We can also have joint resolutions passed by Congress. Typically, these are dealing with something that is temporary, that they don't necessarily believe is long-term enough to put on the law books, but they both believe that that it's important enough to bring to the nation's attention to put in place for a short period of time. So sometimes a joint resolution could look like the annexation of new territory. Joint resolution is typically what happens when they are proposing a new amendment to the Constitution, something that's only going to be there for a short period of time until it could be transformed into a bill or a law once it is passed. Congress also has the option to pass a concurrent resolution. Concurrent resolutions do not have the power of a law, and therefore they do not require a presidential signature. These are generally position statements. They're generally just acknowledging the fact that the House and the Senate have this viewpoint on something. But again, the most important thing here is that you know concurrent resolution is not a law. It does not have to be signed by president. It is simply a statement by Congress that they have agreed to work together on a particular issue. A resolution is something that is going to be dealt with or that it's only going to affect one chamber. So it's only going to affect the Senate or it's only going to affect the House of Representatives. Most often, resolutions are used to amend rules within the particular chamber. So resolution does not require presidential signature, but they are going to change the way that they do things within their particular body. From time to time, they will also include riders. Now, riders are where you're going to add something to a current bill that is up for discussion or that is being passed through. A rider typically cannot survive on its own and would never pass as a law or would never pass as a bill by itself. But it will be attached on to something else that is most likely going to pass, and this rider could then be included in that legislation. Now, sometimes Congress members will add riders to a bill to poison a law or to ensure that it will get vetoed by the president. Because as they know, let's say they're part of the minority party, they know that this law is going to get passed, and then they throw the rider on there. As Congress and the House, or as Congress passes it on the president, they know the president's never going to sign that with that rider on there. And so sometimes they do that just to mess up the pot. Now, in the House of Representatives, I'm going to walk through just a few of the key pieces of information regarding a bill becoming a law in the House. It all starts with the hopper. It's a little old school, but they still have a box up there at the front of the House in which any bill that is going to be proposed on the House floor has to be put into this wooden box called a hopper. It's one of those sentimental things that we have kept around because so many important pieces of legislation have been there. It's a historical piece, and so they honor that by keeping that there. So the clerk takes it out of the hopper, and the clerk is the one who is going to number and title that bill for official documentation. It is then documented in the House Journal and Congressional Record, and everything that happens there has to be documented, has to be put into that Congressional Record and House Journal. So I didn't put a definition up here on the screen, but you should know the difference between the Journal and the Record. So the House Journal is the official record of the daily proceedings that happen on the House floor. So think of it like, you go home, you write a journal about the day's events, diary, that type of thing. That's the House Journal. The Congressional Record, however, is a much larger account. It includes transcripts of the day's events, including speeches that were given on the House floor. It includes full documentation of everything that was presented. The Congressional Record is extremely detailed. It's not always accurate, however, because you have, I believe it's up to 5 days to amend the Congressional Record. And so there are times where you can go in there, you can modify that, change it, change the wording. So you kind of have to look at both the Journal and the Congressional Record to get a most accurate account of what was going on. Now, the Speaker then is going to assign that bill to a committee once it has been documented and has been officially put through the clerk's office. So the committee is then going to vote and decide on the fate of the bill. And as you heard in the song, he was talking about how the committee is going to debate over it, and they could kill it right there. But if it passes through committee, then it can go on. There's a term here called pigeonholing, where members of the committee may not like the bill. They might just shove it in a corner somewhere. They call that the pigeonhole, and forget about it, and refuse to bring it up for vote on the House floor. And essentially it will be an attempt to kill the bill. If members of Congress go to that committee and they have a discharge petition, they can force that committee to pull that bill out to the House floor for a vote. So discharge position is the counterbalance to pigeonholing, where the committee has tried to kill the bill by ignoring it and not bringing it up for a vote. A discharge position, you have to get so many congressional members to sign with you on that, but they will force that committee to then bring it up for a vote in the House. Ultimately, it is up to the Rules Committee to decide whether or not a bill gets on the calendar for a vote. This is one of the most important committees. As I was talking about the seniority rule, you want to be on the Rules Committee. That's a prominent one. And so they will determine which bills actually get called up for votes on the floor. These are usually very influential members of the political parties. Now, again, all this stuff is on Canvas for my outline here, so if this is a lot to digest right now, go back and reread through it and listen to this once again over the weekend. So I know we're covering a lot of stuff here. Now, in the House, the bill gets out to the floor. The Rules Committee is put on the calendar, and it is time to vote. We have something called the Committee of the Whole, and the Committee of the Whole is the idea where you are going to have everybody in the House of Representatives present, including the Speaker, to vote on this bill. Now, when I say everybody, it doesn't always mean all 435. We have to have a quorum. And a quorum is the minimum number necessary to do business. And each house, or the House and the Senate, they have their own rules for what constitutes a quorum, as far as how many people you have to have there. And So if there's not enough people, they're going to go get the sergeant at arms. They're going to say, hey, we need 5 more members. Go get them. He's going to go find them in their offices, drag them out, and say, we need you here, present, even if you're not going to vote. We have to have enough bodies here to have a quorum to vote on this bill. You can actually abstain. You do not have to vote when you're there. It then goes up for debate. It's already been debated in committee, but according to the rules of Congress, you have to give opportunities to debate this bill on the floor. The debates are limited. I believe it's 1 hour is the maximum amount of time that you can have the floor in the House of Representatives, and then you must yield to somebody else. I think there's obvious reasons for that, because if there's 435 members and all 435 wanted to speak and had an unlimited amount of time, it would take forever. When it comes to voting, we have used 5 different methods of voting. I am not going to require that you know all of these because it's really pointless to having you memorize all of them, but we've used things like voice voting, where we have just shouted out, okay, all those in favor say yes, all those in favor, or all those opposed say no, and whichever one's louder carries the motion. They've used things like roll call, where they'll call out your name, you got to vote. Today we use computerized voting, where they have a button on their desk, and when they're called for a vote, they just press the button. And it's all done computerized that way. Unless somebody calls for one of these other specific votes, they still could. So standing vote is simply all those stand, all those opposed remain seated. So we're just going to leave it at that. Now on the Senate. Senate does things similar, but there are some key differences in the Senate in the way that they handle this. So the Senate does not have a hopper, and instead each individual senator gets to introduce his own bill. He gets up and he gets to speak and he gets to say, I present to you today this bill, and here's what it's all about. I want it to be considered for a vote. The majority leader then gets to determine if that bill may come back to the floor again, or if he just wastes everybody's time by getting up and talking about something nobody else cares about. If he determines that that particular senator may come back for further conversation, discussion on that bill, then they set up the rules for debate. And in the Senate, there is almost unlimited debate that can happen, which can lead to filibuster. Now, filibuster is the practice by which you are going to get up, take your turn at the podium, and you're going to talk and talk and talk and talk so long that the bill will expire and won't be eligible for a vote.
Didn't they just do something like that like last year or the year before?
Yeah,
It was like the longest one that had ever been held.
I don't know if it made if it made that record or not, but it was one of the longest. So yeah, this happens quite often. It's happened with the nomination of Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch. So what their intent is with the filibuster is to basically monopolize the time of the Senate to make sure that they never get to voting, and the opposing party just says, okay, forget it, we'll kill the bill, we won't even vote on it because you're going to take our time, we've got better things to do, we got to go worry about other stuff. So it is essentially a time killer. And some of you think that many times teachers are filibustering your classes and we're just killing your time. At least I hope not. So I want to share with you an example. One of my favorite